You mentioned that you spent the last 2 years working with a team of economists and that you've been simulating and running different models about, you mentioned like if we cured all cancer instantly, that would add about 2 to 3 years to everybody's or to the average lifespan. Tell me more about this tool. That sounds really powerful.
I basically interviewed 102 scientists to map out timelines, funding needed, just what would be required for us to arrive at breakthroughs in aging biology. And then from there, what would be the returns on investment for those specific breakthroughs? So what would happen to the US population and economy if we could reverse brain aging by a year versus reversing ovarian aging by a year? How many lives could we save or create, and how many dollars could we add to US GDP? And unsurprisingly, the aging organ with the single highest ROI is the brain, because, most work today is cognitive, and you get just an immediate return on investment by investing in existing humans with fully grown brains as opposed to creating them from scratch. And that seems important to me, right? To value existing humans a little bit more highly than we do potential new ones, future humans. So, my discount rate is a little bit higher than a lot of people's in that regard. I think we have a moral duty to care for our older adults. It's not just because they're 80 now that we should stop caring about them. And in fact, from a GDP standpoint, investments in brain aging are more valuable to the economy than almost anything else, because we usually peak around age 58 income-wise. So most of us will make the most we ever will around age 60 or so, and then our income will predictably decline. So from a GDP standpoint, adults aged 50 and 60 are more valuable to the economy than adults aged 20, which is pretty stunning, right? If you think about it.
Right. So I actually think this is an incredibly important point. I want to kind of double click on it. It's not surprising to me that extending brain function is the most ROI positive sort of organ life extension, because if I make my heart 5% more efficient or effective, I might be able to run faster or more comfortably walk upstairs, et cetera, et cetera. But there are very few jobs where that translates to my earning potential.
Right.
But if I can improve my cognitive function, it's very easy to understand why I might perform better in income earning activities, right? I literally get paid to come up with cool algorithms and to be creative and all of those things. And so many of us who do cognitive heavy work, right? Lawyers that come up with better arguments are going to make more money. Doctors that figure something out faster are going to save more patients, right? All of those things. So you totally get why brain translates to income, translates to, GDP and all of those things. But one way to think about this idea is like, so let's say we figured out how to stall cognitive decline. So if our brain function's peaking at around age 58 or something like that, and let's say instead of starting to fall through, the next 7 years or so through retirement age 65, you could extend my performance at 58, just flatline for another 7 years or something like that. That almost suggests that like chasing quote unquote longevity is silly, and instead we should just focus on the much more tangible problems of delaying cognitive decline. And then it kind of goes back to, Alzheimer's so well funded and all that. Well, maybe that's actually the best way to go after longevity. And I'm curious if you're going to tell me that I'm thinking about that wrong.
So the thing with your argument is that healthy people don't normally wake up dead. So, if you keep someone, in fact, healthier for longer, they're likely to wake up alive the next day. Life is the thing that precedes all other things, right? In order for you to have an income in the first place, you need to be alive. I do think that, in the short term, we're going to be looking at very high economic returns from reversing overall brain aging. And then we're going to be able to reverse overall aging, biological aging, and maybe we can reverse aging by 20 or 30 years. And I do see a future where we're going to have to just flip Social Security on its head, because right now we subsidize the decline of older adults. I think in the future, we're going to start subsidizing the development of younger ones. Right now we spend by 2029, the U.S. is going to be spending about a full half its federal budget on adults age 65 and older, just with programs like Medicare and Social Security. How do we make a dent on that? The closest thing to an economic free lunch we can get is just letting people work in good health when they want to. And in order to work, they need to A, be alive, and B, more often than not, they need to be healthy, right? So I think being alive and being healthy are two prerequisites to that equation.
Well, definitely not going to argue with being alive being important. If you think about specifically those problems of like Medicare costs and Social Security cost becoming out of budget, to what extent is the most important lever to move cognitive performance? Because that does seem like an easier problem than aging globally.
I do know that it is an easier problem because we've been trying for decades now to, target Alzheimer's individually, and we've been failing at it. We've been investing quite heavily, and almost all developed countries have been investing really heavily in targeting Alzheimer's as a single disease, and we haven't come up with very good solutions for it. You could explain it by just like some fraud, and we all know that there's a pretty reliably documented snake oil history in Alzheimer's, but in aging bio, I just think we have far more low-hanging fruits to be discovered because not much has been tried, right? There have been so far 0 clinical trials on the biology of aging.
I think that's a pretty profound statement. There have been 0 clinical trials.
Yeah.
I don't know that most people know that.
You could count GLP-1 agonists as a drug for aging, but it has not been designed to target aging, right? So that's a pretty big difference.
That's interesting.
Okay. So you could repurpose therapeutics. You could repurpose metformin again, and you could get just an astounding return on investment from a social standpoint. But we've never come up, as a government, as a society, and said, let's develop a therapeutic to improve how we age as a species. That has not happened.